Okay, so today I'm going to give you a map of how to know if you are checked out or how to know if you are avoiding your feelings. And this is important. I talk a lot about feeling and the willingness to feel as being the key to your freedom, the key to your self-realization. And I speak from experience. I've had a Kundalini awakening, which amplifies emotional energy from like 10 watts to a million watts, because the energy is trying to get the person to stop avoiding their feelings. And I've walked through a lot of trauma in my life. I had a very traumatic childhood. I was around a lot of chaotic energy. I had almost 2 decades long violent eating disorder. I went along with what everybody else was doing. I didn't have any sense of self. I had a very fractured ego. I was very disassociated. So my journey back into my body, back into this reality, has been a rough ride, but the most valuable, meaningful, act that I have ever done. Because anything, you can realize yourself as God, and that's what happened to me. I had a spontaneous awakening, but my spirit was still back here. It was like around me. I could still feel. I've always been very aware of feelings and thoughts, but I wasn't aware of how unaware I was of certain things that were operating in my life and creating my reality. And discovering that was amazing, and being willing to get back in my body was the key to being able to finally use intention and create my reality and gosh, heal my body in ways that I didn't even know it needed to be healed. But so I speak from experience. I realize that coming back into your body and your nervous system can be very, a traumatic experience. I don't want to re-traumatize anyone. I'm not a medical healthcare professional or a psychiatrist. And so be responsible for your own health and your own awakening. I'm just speaking from my own experience for whatever it's worth, take it or leave it. So feeling is the key to self-realization, because the only thing preventing you from being realized at the physical level, right, in your chakras, meaning that your psychological content has been purified and no longer distorts your ability to read reality. You could technically still read reality. You can kind of learn how to put your awareness outside of you and travel and remote view, but none of that really matters to me. What matters to me is being embodied, meaning my spirit is in my experience, in my chakras. I have brought light into the distorted parts of myself that misunderstood themselves to be terrified and separate from life. So this is about bringing spirit all the way into your chakra system, into your physical life. And this process automatically corrects your thought patterns. It automatically corrects your beliefs, because now you've brought the identity of light into your system. And so anything that you affirm from there, like anything positive that you think, is an affirmation that you already feel and know. My experience is affirmations, they all feel good and true to me because I've brought light into my body and into my chakras. And so this is just how, I have a really positive expectation is natural to me, because I know that I am the creator of my reality. I know I am creator, and I know that all is me. And now, more of the parts of me know that, right? The parts of me that were frozen in memories of trauma, they are now unfrozen, and those energies that were stuck and frozen have now been freed and repurposed, and then now they're back in my heart where they belong. So that's what happens. We have impacts, and it's kind of like these moments of time that get frozen, and we retrieve these parts of us simply by seeing how they're echoing in our present moment. And how they're echoing in our present moment is how it's a perception and a feeling that you're having right now that's anything less than peace, love, and trust. Or peace, love, and joy, right? Not even trust, because only a separate self has to trust life. If you know you are life, it's just this joy of what you are, and of flowing energy. So how do you know if you're avoiding your feelings? I'm going to give you a list, whatever comes to me right now. It's not going to be an exhaustive list. Ask yourself, how do I avoid my feelings? Because there might be some unique ways that you do it. So primarily, okay, the number one way that we avoid our feelings is a racing mind. So if your mind is racing, you're avoiding a feeling. Because a racing mind, just that term, doesn't it sound stressful? My mind is racing. It's like blah, 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 blah. And what it's echoing, right? What it's echoing, there's actually an energy, probably in the solar plexus, but might be. The solar plexus is like the personal mind. It's like the individual mind. So oftentimes it is in the solar plexus, but it can come from other chakras that are harder to feel. But let's say there's a feeling of panic, right? You have a feeling of panic in your solar plexus. And underneath that panic is a feeling of powerlessness, because let's say somebody in your world is asking you to make a decision and you don't have a decision to make. And you don't feel comfortable saying, you don't feel empowered. You're not in your God consciousness being like, everything that I know will be revealed to me when I have to know it. But it's nice talking to you. You know, it's like you don't have any problem with what anybody says to you when you are comfortable with who you are. But if you feel that, right, it's like this feeling of panic. So what happens is that if you don't feel it at this stage, it will rise up and it will become a story. Boop, 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 boop. So it started as a feeling, right? And the feeling might be powerless. Then a masking emotion on top of that might be panic, because, oh God, I can't give this person like an answer that will satisfy them. So like now I don't know what to do. So now I'm panicked. Okay. So you don't want to feel that because it feels horrible. It feels like your guts are in a blender. So the energy rises up and becomes a story. Okay, what do I do? I don't know, anything stressful, any kind of stressful dialogue, right? That would echo the feeling that you're feeling. So sometimes a mental dialogue is a clue as to something that you could look at and simply release by having a realization. So it's not always the case that it's just a feeling you have to feel. The feeling, you know, you could release and purify simply by feeling, or by finding a perception and dropping it. Like both of them work. So, and why? Let's just answer that. Like, even though belief and identity comes before feeling, if you are willing to be totally absorbed in a feeling without any fear, without any thought to separate you from it, right? Let's say you feel a panic and you just like open up to it and you're like, oh, just do your thing. Like you don't say anything, but you're just like, you let it move. What you will experience that panic energy literally turns into bliss. Because all energy, all life energy is bliss, but the mind distorts it based on a misunderstanding of separation, and it creates a negative emotion. So when you do that, when you go into a feeling with total consciousness, you are in the identity of total consciousness, and that can very well release like a whole pattern, even perception, even, you know, like parts of your soul that are frozen in time. Like that could be that powerful. But sometimes if you listen to your mental chatter, and it's like, for example, a good example is when you're always defending yourself, always validating your position, always explaining yourself. Where does that come from? That comes from, it's like you don't accept yourself. You don't accept that your perspective is valid, that your life is valid, that you are perfectly valid the way you are, and that you know this in such a solid way, and you know that other people can only communicate to you from their level of self-realization. So like nothing that, why would you need to explain or validate yourself to anyone if you were very comfortable in who you are? It's like, it doesn't mean anything. You might feel the need to explain. Let's say somebody helps you out with money, like a parent or whoever, right? Or a boss. So on some level, like you might get stressed out because if you equate somebody with your survival, and you feel the need to explain yourself to them, it's like you feel the need to explain yourself to them because if I don't, then I won't get what I need from them. But the antidote to that is realizing that, one, you don't need to explain yourself to anyone. You don't need to be anywhere you don't want to be in order to survive. You think that because when you're a child, you don't have any options as to where to go. And so if you want to leave a situation more than anything, but you don't believe you have an option, it gets wired into your mind that what's familiar to you is I have no options, I have nowhere to go, being where I want to be, doing what I want to do, and being me isn't an option. Boom. So you believe that you require other people for your survival, right? So there could be a lot to unpack just in listening to your mental chatter. And I suggest that you unpack these things, because once you unpack it and you see it for what it is, it's like, oh, this is just part of me that doesn't realize that it is the universe, that it's infinite intelligence, that I am God, as so are they. And they created whatever they created in their life, and I am creator as well. I can create in my life. That is, I can create in my life, and I am valid as I am because of the very nature of myself. Right? It's obvious when you're self-realized, when a part of you is self-realized, it doesn't question itself. So mind racing is one, okay? So you can unpack it, or you can just go into the feeling. So if it's this, boom, 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 just go into it. Open your body and let it disperse. It's like a fist that really, it wants to unwind. All of the parts of ourself want to be self-realized. This is an important thing to know. Like, all these energy want to go back home. The energies want to go back. They want to be repurposed into creative energy that isn't a distorted energy. They want that. So it's like all you're doing is helping them. It's like, oh, all I had to do was stop avoiding you. And you just open right up and you disperse it, and it like repurposes itself back into your creative energy. It's just softening, opening, and allowing. Just allowing to the best of your ability. So another way to know that you could be avoiding something that I've seen when I do readings on people and I look into their chakras, something that I've seen is like fog, like mental fog. And it's kind of like, the feeling is like a deer in headlights. Like it's almost like you go into, I look in the chakra and there's no floor, there's no walls, there's just clouds. Like it's like fog. And that's trickster energy. And trickster means any energy, it's like your survival energy. The trickster is just the survival part of you that wants to keep you in low energy because it believes it's the only way it's going to survive. So maybe on some level you learn that staying in a mental fog, right? Acting clueless, maybe, right? Acting clueless, like fog and confusion, that is a clue that you are avoiding something, either a feeling or something in your life that you need to pay attention to. Like if you think about infinite intelligence and consciousness, like what reason would it have to, and this is not a freeze trauma response. That's not what I'm talking about. This is a little bit different. This is like a fog. This is like a deer in headlights, confusion. Oftentimes, confusion is a way to avoid making a decision that we know we need to make. So rather than being a feeling in this case, it's like, for example, I've given the example many times of like acknowledging that there's abuse going on. Acknowledging that in some way or another, like if you were to let yourself see something, then you'd have to make a decision. And human beings don't like making decisions. Human beings don't like change because they're afraid of the unknown. And because they feel like we don't feel, unless we're self-realized, whether from in the God consciousness or just self-realized as like an empowered human being, we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our decision because we compare to other people. That's another thing, if you're always comparing yourself to somebody else, you are avoiding acknowledging that you don't trust yourself. You are avoiding acknowledging that perhaps you're not letting yourself see that you actually feel really ashamed of who you are or how you look. You're not letting yourself feel that and see that. So why would you want to just go for it and let yourself acknowledge, like, wow, I'm comparing my life to everybody else's life because I actually think my life is a piece of shit. I think I should be like somewhere other than I am, or someone other than who I am. And so that feeling of shame, I'm avoiding it by comparing myself to everyone, right? That scrolling through Instagram, like that's just like interference that I'm using to avoid maybe a feeling of emptiness. Right? You ask yourself, what is it that you're avoiding? Scrolling through Instagram, right? Any kind of panicked behavior. So I just mentioned fog. Okay, fog is a big one. Like if you experience fog, like ask yourself, what am I avoiding? Am I avoiding shock? Am I feeling like an expectation that I had was just shattered? Are you avoiding feeling shattered? Why might you want to go into the feeling of being shattered? Well, if you don't, the reaction to shattered, which is fog, is going to keep showing up in your life, and you're not going to get anywhere because you're just going to be in this fog. You're not going to be in this fog. How is spirit going to manifest in your life if you're always ending up in the fog? If you're always ending up in confusion, you will never make decisions. And what you need to realize about decisions is that decisions that you know in your heart you need to make are always the right decisions. Like we know at a very deep level, like what to do to move forward. And we often don't let ourselves see that because we are afraid to take responsibility. But the truth is that we are the universe. So it's like, you don't need to feel alone in making a decision. A decision that feels like it's wanting to be made is the universe talking through you. So feel confident in that. Turbulence, like pacing, a lot of people I've seen in people's chakras, turbulence, like literally the feeling of being in a washing machine. This is what's familiar to them, right? How does this look like in their physical life? Maybe they're always pacing around. Maybe they're always vaping. Maybe they're always straining their face. Maybe they're always pulling their hair. And that's okay. This is not a judgment. This is just, I want you to be aware of how the energy moves. And that if you just go into it with gentleness, like you can release. If you've been pulling your hair your whole life, and it's because you have a feeling of turbulence inside of you, and what I'm telling you is that if you could go into that feeling and feel it and just feel it, like, oh, like I literally feel nausea and I feel all this energy moving, and like I just feel like I feel like I will be in turbulence forever. It's despair. It's a feeling of despair. Like if you let yourself just feel that, all the layers of that. First, maybe you feel the turbulence, then it'll calm down. Then maybe you'll feel like this deep sense of despair. You go into that, and guess what? If you really stay conscious while you're feeling that, it will dissolve. And maybe you'll have to do it many times. Who cares? Just keep doing it. That's how the energy dissolves. It dissolves by presence, right? With light. So turbulence is another one. Anything that you do when, of course, we know the classic things like doing drugs and binging on food and all of that. And if you're still engaging in any of that, just be easy on yourself. Just realize, like, if you can just tell yourself, like, eventually at some point, if I can explore this idea that the only thing keeping me from my freedom and my joy is the fear of feeling something, just pondering that, contemplating that, like, take that as a seed thought and plant it inside of yourself and let it express itself whenever it's ready to express itself. Like, just be easy on yourself. There was a time where I was like still engaged with like self-harm behaviors, even though I had had like a lot of self-realization. And so that was very painful for me. But I had to say to myself, like, wow, well, can I still love myself if, like, if I do this behavior forever, like, can I still just love myself because I deserve love? That's what I would recommend, like, what else is there? Like, if you haven't figured out how to stop a habit, like, just love yourself and just take it easy and realize that you're a sensitive soul, and realize that feeling emotional energy is hard, and that it isn't taught in this world, and it needs to be taught in this world. And you might be one of the pioneers that's even exploring this possibility, and feel love and appreciation for yourself. So, mental chatter, okay? Fog, confusion, turbulence, panic. Oh, here's another good one. Projection. We project things onto people that we don't want to acknowledge in ourselves. I mean, that's pretty major. I remember it was very hard for me to see, like, I had this really strong sense of guilt. Like, guilt that if I don't, basically I had no sense of self. I had no sense of self because I was very fractured. So I developed this guilt where if I didn't meet other people's expectations, I'd feel like I was doing something wrong. Because in my mind, the only right thing to do is like what people expect of me. Like, I didn't have any inner compass. That's not entirely true, but on some levels I did, but in other areas of life I didn't, partly because what I'm here to do is not really conventional or taught, right? But I didn't have a strong sense of self. I would often go along with other people. I would do drugs and drink, even though I never liked drugs and I never liked alcohol. I actually hated those things. But in my mind, I was like, well, I'm never going to have friends unless I do those things. So I have to do something. If I'm not going to be a drinker, I need to smoke weed. That's the only way I'm going to have friends. This is like how I thought when I was a child, when I was like 13. So I developed this guilt, like if people invited me somewhere and like I didn't really want to go, but I'd feel this strong sense of guilt. Well, okay, I need to, like, I let the guilt move me. I let the guilt direct my behavior. That was really strong in me. So now as an adult, as I'm exploring, as I'm trying to become conscious of this stuff, I notice that particularly when people don't give me what I think I want. So, like, I remember I was going through a transition where all of my assets were locked up. Like, I couldn't access my money because it was frozen in a process. And so I had a friend that was helping me. And when they weren't helping me at the exact time in the exact way that I wanted them to help me, I would say something to them to make them feel guilty. And I was like, I saw that and I was like, ooh, oh shit. I'm projecting my own guilt of feeling like I haven't taken responsibility for my life, which I haven't in a way, right? Because I didn't have a sense of self, and it's all perfect. It's all perfect. But I'm projecting my guilt of feeling like I should be doing something differently. I'm projecting that onto somebody else and telling them that they should be behaving differently. And it's particularly triggered when I don't feel like I'm getting what I want. That's another thing that I would be really aware of. When you don't get what you want from an intimate partner, from a friend, from life, like, what kind of tantrums do you throw? Like, how do you react? Like, what are you not, like, what you're avoiding feeling, right, is that you actually feel completely powerless and like you're never going to survive, that you don't have what it takes. Like, you don't have what it takes to make it in this world. Basically, that's what you don't want to feel. You feel shame and unworthiness and like you're this little measly piece of shit that can't do anything in this world. That's a really bad feeling. But you're avoiding feeling that every time you blame life or you blame anybody for you not being where you want to be. What you're actually avoiding is feeling separate from life. And so you have to acknowledge, like, oh, I do feel separate from life. Part of me feels like I need that person's resources or this person's love in order to survive. It's important that you see that. Because, like I've said, you cannot in physics, right? When you withdraw your attention from something, it no longer operates in your experience. And you can't withdraw your attention from something unless you acknowledge it. Because, like I've said before, part of your ego can arise within you, right? Whether it's me projecting my guilt on someone. So if I see it for what it is in the moment, I see it arising in myself. I see myself having the thought, oh, I want to tell that person that thing so that they feel guilty. I want to hurt that person. Oh, it comes up, okay? But if you have decided to come back into your nervous system, you can be aware of it right here, and you can discard it. You can withdraw your attention from it, but only because you're calling a spade a spade. You're calling it for what it is. But if you're doing all these strategies to avoid letting yourself see something for what it is, you cannot go beyond it. You cannot go beyond it. So I hope I've conveyed the value of becoming aware, of being aware of your feelings, being aware of the parts of yourself that feel alone, that feel incapable, that feel worthless. It's all lies, right? But we spend so much energy covering up that parts of us actually feel this way. We never actually get to bring those parts into self-realization. Like, all of you can't know what it is. Can't know its true nature unless you first understand where it's at. Can you teach a child or anybody anything unless you really unless you're sensitive and you know where it's at? It's impossible. So be mindful of when your mind is racing, of when you're in a fog, of when you're confused. Spinning is another one. Oh, spinning. Spinning, I've looked inside of people's chakras and it literally looks like a wormhole. Boom, 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 boom. It's like a wormhole, like a spinning, it's like something like a chaotic feeling thing that makes you dizzy. Like, why would you stay dizzy? Why would you get into a chaotic whirlpool? Ask yourself. It might vary from person to person, but what makes you feel like you're in a chaotic whirlpool? I know for me personally, disassociation put me in a chaotic whirlpool, because actually disassociation was the reaction to actually feeling completely at the mercy of my environment. That's what it feels like. Spinning for me was a symptom of feeling I am completely powerless. And for me, spinning would feel so strong. Like, even me talking about it now, I feel a whirlpool around me because I'm giving it attention. It feels like I'm on the gravitron, like whoa. And I realize, like, my survival mind keeps me spinning because it's trying to keep me out of my feelings, primarily. It's trying to keep me out of my feelings, out of my feeling of being completely at the mercy of my environment and completely unable to be in my own energy. That's what I'm avoiding. I'm avoiding seeing that I, on many levels, feel completely powerless in my environment. And so what's the antidote? I make a decision that I no longer want to be that person, right? I don't want to be at the mercy of my environment. I want to overcome my environment. I want to be in my own energy. I want to reinforce my own aura. I want to decide who I am and how I feel. And you cannot make choices. You cannot make any decisions, and you have no free will as long as your distorted emotional energies are what's moving through you. So it might be a good idea to map out your experience and figure out how you're avoiding your feelings, and to stop avoiding them. And I'm sure I'll talk more about this on another day because I talk about it all the time, but I say similar things in many ways because I feel like on any given day, the energy or the words or whatever, like however it's conveyed, might trigger or set off or help you understand something in just a nuanced little new way. So I hope I've done that today, and I hope you have a good day.